Hello and welcome to another episode of Casual Friday, brought to you by the FTX app. For all your portfolio tracking and spot trading and a way of trading where you don't get liquidated, go there. If you don't have the app by now, don't know what to tell you. Check it out, always being updated, swap from one asset to the next. You know how it is. And again, some new content coming around, other FTX features soon, and you have that to look forward to. In the meantime, though, normal Friday routine for us. We have the monthly close to talk about, which is kind of uneventful, but still cool, I guess. We get to comment on seasonality as well, because September tends to be terrible for crypto, and October, November tend to be better. So definitely some high time frame themes to cover. Don, how's it going?
Good. The monthly, right? We talked about that. It's not like too interesting, but it's actually like I think on the S&P, it's actually really interesting. So we'll have a bit to talk about.
Oh, not interesting in
Yeah.
the way that I want it to be interesting, I'll tell you that
Nope.
much.
Yep.
Yeah, thing is, it seems like in the past week, and as much as we have memed the whole decoupling thing, because again, contextually, that trade has been in the public consciousness since like the start of the year, and it's been one of the worst ideas ever, right? But if there's been any evidence to support it recently, it's kind of emerged in the last week or so, because the S&P has taken a complete beating, right? And so has
Yes.
Nasdaq, and risk indices just kind of got crushed, and crypto held up. Now, we kind of wrote about this dynamic in Technical Roundup, where crypto holding up isn't usually enough, and what you've had in the past is S&P and Nasdaq nuke, crypto moves sideways, everyone's like, oh my god, look at all this relative strength, then it just catches up later. And it's more a case of inefficient markets, more so than relative strength, right? It's like lag as opposed to relative strength. But I mean, Bitcoin's stuck at the same price. On the intraday kind of observations, it's kind of depressing that 20k is like the best level of resistance ever. But like bigger picture, there does seem to be an appetite for value buying Bitcoin at sort of 18, 9k and thereabouts, even in the face of nuking indices, which isn't like a terrible idea. I don't know how much that can hold on for. I think some people have the idea that that's kind of the relationship from now on, and any further nuke in equities will mean that crypto holds up. I'm not so sure. I still think there's a breaking point. Like if you get a proper rug pull in the indices, that'll kind of take us with it. But yeah, that's just a lot of rambling to say it's probably worth looking over the higher time frame to see where we're at. I think you mentioned on the monthly, I mean, you'd like a monthly close above that kind of 19.9, 20k level, presumably.
Uh,
Because at the moment
yes.
it's sort of below, but it's kind of right on top of it. It's not like it's not an obvious breakdown. I'll say that much, right? But it's not one of those like blatant support on the monthly either, like it was,
No.
let's say, a couple of months ago. So do you think this kind of supports your thesis of maybe just more chop, more consolidation between like what depressingly 18 and low to mid 20s?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I want to say about like this decoupling thing, right? Quickly before I jump into this, is that a lot of the decoupling, right, that we had on the way down has just, in hindsight, right, has just been Three Arrows Capital deploying and getting completely rinsed. They out leveraged the entire way up, the entire way down, which I don't know if anyone else is doing right now. I don't think so. So that's at least something, right? So basically, whenever you had like crypto perform strongly over the S&P in the past, it's been just Three Arrows Capital, just kind of giga longing and getting the shit beaten out of them. And that's different now, right? They're obviously not there anymore. I don't think anyone else is taking the risk they were taking, at least not on the scale like that. So it's that's at least gone, right? So you want to look at where the leverage is. In that kind of environment, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you that it just needs to give it some, like we need to give it some time to see if that's actually gonna stick, right? Because it could just go away tomorrow. But yeah, with regards to the monthly close, it's not the best. Like let's say it that way. I don't really mind it too much on the Bitcoin chart. I mind it a lot on the S&P chart. I actually don't like it at all. Like on the S&P. Bitcoin is just like it's hanging around 20k. As long as it's around there, it's somewhat okay. And I would expect chop. But the S&P breaking down like it has been, not the best sign, I think. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But I'm definitely gonna be more conservative if the monthly S&P just closes below support, which is, I don't know if you have it open or not, but it's like
Yep.
3.7 to like low 3.7 to high 3.7.
Yeah.
We're very, very, very likely to gonna close below it. I mean, it's just 3 hours to go at the state of recording.
Please, someone on this Friday night, come and rescue this thing.
Yeah, so like if we close below, I think there's a good chance that we're gonna open next month, actually retest it from the underside, and then I would expect it to go lower.
I mean, it has been very technically clean, right? So kind of in crypto, a
Yes.
lot of the time you don't get those free tests and it just rugs. But in this case, that wouldn't be surprising. I was also
Mhm.
wondering if you've been watching that same level on the weekly, because it's been quite good. Like it technically closed like a bit below that same monthly cluster on the weekly, and then this
Yeah.
week was like retest week essentially.
Yeah,
And
not
and we
pretty.
were also kind of noted the kind of keeping it, paying attention to the double bottom at like 3600s to see if you get some sort of like spring type of trap price action to then get it above the monthly cluster. But what you got instead is some version of the worst case scenario where you get like a little spring from the double bottom, but all it gives you is a bearish retest, right? Of what you want, of the structure that you want to be reclaimed. And it's below it right now. Yeah, I agree. Monthly close there wouldn't be great. It could set up for like a retest scenario, but I mean, overall, it just like that's about as downtrend continuation as it gets, right?
Yeah.
Market nukes, first test, best test of 3700, then bounces to like the best resistance, and then nukes through that support. And then I think all of us are looking towards pretty much the pre-COVID highs, right? Around 33 to 3400, that kind of consolidation as the first level. And
Yeah.
anything past that, to be honest, gets into really scary, like big recession, bubble, dead territory, in my opinion. So,
Yeah, it's scary. I mean, honestly, like this is already quite scary. The fact that we're testing supports once and then we nuke through them immediately. If you think about it, right? I mean, it looks like we've been testing supports over and over again on the weekly, right? But it's not true on the higher time frames. On the higher time frames, this thing broke down, had a tiny bounce, broke down fully, had a tiny bounce, and is breaking down again,
yeah.
right? It's been 2 months down, 1 month up, but small in comparison. Then 2 months down again, 1 month up, and then 2 months down. So maybe we have an up month next month again. But
I see
it's
this pattern, but I don't like it.
yeah, and it looks really bad, right? And these kind of things, it looks like it wants to set up for like a capitulation event again. We've had that during COVID. I don't like this structure. Obviously, this is going to bounce and it's going to bounce big time. But if you want to draw like a market cycle kind of chart for me, I think that is what we're gonna get for a bounce, where it makes a lower high, but on the high time frames, because it hasn't really bounced at all on the monthly, right? Like there's green candles, yes, but there's not been any significant, like, okay, you have like 5 months of
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
It's been basically, it's just like, okay, it chills for a month and then it goes further down. So I think at some point it's probably going to make a lower high and then actually come back. And that is quite the nasty structure. It makes sense given the global situation, I think. Like the whole like mania during COVID, retracing all of that makes a lot of sense to me. Like we're objectively a worse position than we were before COVID, right? We have not only COVID, but we have a war going on in Europe. So like it makes sense from that standpoint. Obviously, we've got inflation, blah blah blah, but still, right? Just thinking about it very, very like in a okay straightforward way, it
Easy
makes
come, easy
sense.
go with these things, right?
Exactly. So maybe that's just how it's gonna be. I think in general the S&P deserves to take some time off, but that's obviously not the best look for crypto because
Yeah.
we've been correlated. And we talked about this last show, right? Where I said I think like the trading thing it has to
Yeah.
go or is going, and I think that's pretty much if this thing goes sideways or down or chop for 4, 5, 6 years, people are gonna
Ew.
do less of this
Hopefully we
gambling
turn the
shit.
printer on before then.
Yeah, but I think it could realistically do this because markets always do this, right? We've seen this in crypto over and over again. We have the luxury that like the crypto market cycles are so quick that we can go through four, while the traditional markets, like you're born in one and then you die and it's still the same one. And we go through four, right? So we kind of have more experience with this, but in general, how markets go, right? Whenever they overheat and people get just completely crazy, and you can see this with the options in a traditional finance world right now, where people are just gambling on options, right? The options volumes are fucking mental, and people are losing whatever they have, and I think that needs to stop basically, and the market needs to kind of just go sideways for those people to bleed dry, as
You're
bad
just
as it sounds.
gatekeeping, Donald. You don't want normal people to make money. You
I
want to
mean,
keep it all to yourself. Thing is, there is a bittersweet element in that, right? Like, under the guise of democratization of finance and kind of letting the little guy win against the big guy speculation, etc., it's just like people just got rinsed, realistically,
yep.
and on average lost like all of their money. So it was like a good message, and it was, it was a good idea, well intentioned, but in reality, the game you're signed up for isn't just like, I'm gonna buy this thing, hold it, and then the hedge funds get liquidated or something. Which is a lot of people's understanding of their investment strategy, especially like in the meme stock kind of communities.
Oh
Some of
yes.
their beliefs about like market structure are just frankly completely bizarre.
Yeah.
And they're learning the hard way, I think.
I mean, it sounds like a cult when you read through these subreddits and you read
Yeah.
through like the comments that you get. Like whenever I comment about GME or AMC or any of it, the comments that I get is still, I just like, I'm like,
Yeah.
what the fuck?
It's
Like
worse in
this is,
some crypto communities.
I mean, this is 2018 XRP stuff, right? When it was at $3 and then went to like zero, basically.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
exactly how it feels like.
Oh man.
And I know how that went, right? We went through like the most brutal bear market. Volumes went to zero. Altcoins went to zero. Bitcoin almost went to zero before, like it went sideways and then it went to zero. And it's like, uh, realistically, I think it makes sense to expect that too for the traditional markets. Now, it's not really my market to trade. I don't have a horse in the race per se. Obviously, everyone has, but not like it's not like I'm spending my lifetime trading this market. But it just makes sense in my head. I could change my view on this relatively rapidly, but just that makes sense to me. And just looking at the chart, it also does. This thing has clearly had a blow off top, right? Just looking at the S&P, it's a blow off top, and you have like a big correction, and after that, it makes sense to have a big period of going sideways. And the good
But it's
thing
not even
is,
there yet, right? This is still in the very much in the downtrend type
oh
of
yes,
part of it.
hmm
And that's kind of, I guess, one of the reassuring things. You mentioned the market cycle thing of where the lower high would come in, etc. But thankfully, the market's I know we've sort of beaten about this point, but the market's also just been very technical as far as these things go. So at least
yeah,
you've got that to guide you, and it's kind of very straightforward with levels and market structure, etc. But yeah, if you follow the traditional cycle of like, the trend ends and then the trend goes from downtrend to ranging or consolidation, and then you eventually start an uptrend, time wise, we're looking at, a much longer period than I think most people are comfortable with, which sucks, obviously.
yeah. I don't think you're gonna get rich investing in the stock market in the next 5 years.
5. Oh, God, man.
But I mean,
Could be wrong.
I mean, I honestly lowballed this. Like, I'm like, I could see this go on for 10
Don's like, we're
years.
in Japan. It's the lost decade. Go home, everyone.
I mean, honestly, like,
Oh,
I wouldn't be
gross.
surprised. Now, like, I don't want to be the doomer. That's why I'm saying, like, I wouldn't be surprised if it's 5 years because, I think there's still going to be opportunities. And I mean, just looking at crypto right now, uh, seeing that the S&P broke the most important support and Bitcoin is up, that is very, very cool. That's very like interesting to see, especially given we're at cycle highs, right? Or like cycle lows, whatever, like 2017 cycle highs, current cycle lows, I guess. It's nice to see some strength there, and it's nice. At least I'm assuming it's not based on toxic leverage as it was with Fiero's capital.
Yeah.
So there's something to look forward to, right? Maybe the S&P just goes sideways and bleeds, and crypto goes again. That'd be kind of nice. That would be an easy way to get people into crypto, because all of these gamblers need to go somewhere, and they need to lose their money somewhere. And
Job
if the
office, mate.
S&P doesn't move, if the S&P doesn't move, I mean, maybe crypto is it, right?
Yeah.
So fingers crossed on that front. But I don't want to call it just yet. Like you said, it's been the most discussed thing the entire way down, like the decoupling, and it's never happened. And it doesn't make sense to be like, okay, we have it. But honestly, it's setting up. Like
It's
if
setting up,
this,
yeah.
like the way it is setting up right now, if we get like a candle from like 20K to 25, while the S&P looks like this, then you could very, very realistically argue that we have at least like midterm wise, like for the next few months, decoupled.
Yeah.
And that'd be fun, right? That's a law. That's like throwing people in cold water again, because I mean, people have been getting used to trading the S&P, right? This is always how trading works. Like you get surprised by a change in market behavior, and then you kind of deny that it has happened, and then it like fucks you over and over and over again, and then you kind of accept that the market has changed, and at some point it's going to change again, and you get fucked over that again, right? That's kind of how, like, for most market participants, it's just how the market works, right? Um, and at some point, this market behavior that we're having, the S&P kind of dictating everything, will change. So that's something to look forward to. I would love it. That would kind of make people not feel secure in their positions anymore, which kind of makes the market more volatile, and makes for excellent trading conditions, just based on the fact that people are like, okay, what the fuck do I do now? And whenever people are like, okay, what the fuck do I do now, you can actually make some money, because
Or lose
people that
some,
don't know what
allegedly.
yeah, I mean, people that don't know what the fuck they're doing, they're gonna act in panic or in euphoria, and you can take advantage of that. People that kind of like have a framework that works in their head, they don't. So yeah, looking forward to that,
Yeah, there's
actually.
also some nice narrative cope we can sprinkle around if we get that type of strength. Like, oh, look, all the central banks are going to be forced to pause their hikes, or their currencies are breaking and there are cracks in the system, and Bitcoin still held 20K, some shit like that. Not necessarily the most compelling argument in the world, but it doesn't have to be, right? Because at that point, the price action does like 90% of the heavy lifting. And then
Yep.
if we can add some like plausible deniability on top of some narrative, being like, oh look, Bank of England is breaking, it's Soros, Satoshi, something something, all this type of stuff. You just have to. That's just some nice window dressing for the price action, as is often the case with narratives, right?
Yeah.
So we've got that to potentially look forward to. As far as kind of zooming in a little bit on BTC technicals, do you still care about that weekly cluster? The good old June cluster at sort of 21K or
Hmm.
thereabouts as a weekly level of resistance, especially if we get like a really fast move into it and we haven't yet reached it. Is that somewhere where you'd expect profit taking or even to fade type of thing?
Yeah, I think that's the area where it's going to decide itself, basically, whether it wants to squeeze, like I said, to like 25K or something or not. So it's definitely an interesting area. I'm not entirely sure if I can take a trade around it, because realistically, if it is going to break that level, it's going to do it in one candle, most likely anyway. If it just like slow walks through it, then it's much harder to take a trade. So like, either it slow walks through it and then there's no trade, or it just teleports through it and then there's no trade. So I mean, it's just kind of like, it's a good level. It's a good level to watch, but I don't know what to do with it,
Maybe it's a good one to
honestly.
trade next week or something. Once we've either rejected or plowed through it,
Yes,
you can kind of do some lower time frame business there. But still a good sort of pivot, I think,
I
overall,
do agree.
as far as this range goes. As far as the daily time frame goes, there's some interesting candle structure here. It's still pretty much bouncing off the same range low for like the nth time. We had some pretty nice candles a couple of days ago, like that big scary red wick one, and then the next day it kind of engulfs the lower half of it at least, right? Or kind of spikes below its low and then closes kind of green above the level. That was decent, but it still feels a bit noisy to me. I kind of agree with you that sort of 19K, despite it being the 15th test of that level, is still where a lot of this selling is getting soaked up. And sort of 21K is still like a weekly pivot worth paying attention to. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's kind of the short term range. And I think you should let that decide itself. And pretty much not worth fading the break if you get like an impulse through either of those boundaries. That's at least my kind of framework for it. I was trading this intraday a tiny bit. Like I took a short, I think it was yesterday or the day before or something. Yeah, day before yesterday. And I just, basically got out at the daily range low and sold like the top of this for it. It's just, that crappy type of day trade, basically. Sold 19.5, closed like 18.9 or whatever. And the bid strength coming off from when my take profit was hit was just like really strong. I don't know if you ever, I mean, I saw you tweet about this as well, and some other people also, that sometimes to get a sense for how strong or weak the market is, you kind of have to be in it to kind of
Yeah.
get a really get a feel for the flows essentially, and I definitely felt that on a couple of days ago, because the market basically chopped up my entry for because I sold the first test of it, and this is the 4 hour chart. It went nowhere for 12 hours, 16 hours. Thankfully my sizing was irrelevant to not make me sweat. Still on that 1% stablecoin stack risk lifestyle. You know how we do it.
Yeah.
But anyway, as soon as it hit my take profit, I was like, oh, look, it's back at the range low for the 8th time. It's going to nuke this time, and maybe I'm going to regret closing, etc. But they just got soaked up, man. And, here we are. It had an attempt at some sort of Judas, sort of big boy, Jesus, Judas, whichever religious figure you want to choose from the Bible candle on the 4 hour, and it's still floating above. So I think there's a decent likelihood we get to at least I would like the market to test that 21k pivot to see what happens. But yeah, all sorts of monthly close shenanigans, seasonality shenanigans, etc. Yeah, I think my kind of base case at least is 21k, same weekly resistance, 19k, same daily, weekly support. If we're going to get a bigger trend in this next quarter, at least break one of those boundaries, and then I probably won't fade or step in front of whatever price action unfolds. But Bitcoin's been kind of boring, to be honest with you. I guess the only it's boring on its own terms. It's not boring in that it's been kind of holding up given everything else. But as far as its own price action goes, it's still the same old 18 to 19k grind, right? There's nothing new there.
I mean, there's not really anything interesting happening when Bitcoin is moving in a range from, like you said, 18 to 19, or even when you consider the big range from 18 to 22. I mean, that's not really
it's still so sad, right?
Yeah.
Today felt like a big breakout day, and I was like, oh, holy shit, stuff is moving. Then I look, it's like a 2% move. I'm like, oh man, what happened to us, How did we get here?
This is like a 5-minute candle back in the day, and now it's it's the day, and we're happy about it.
Do you remember at the top we got a 10k candle? Yep. I mean, some of the shit that was happening is
I mean, then again, a 10k candle at the top is percentage-wise not that big, given that we're almost at 100k, and then the 10k.
But notionally, it just felt so silly because you and I remember trading this thing for 3,000-4,000, etc., and all these big price levels based on 6, 10, and then you just get one of them just in a single candle, our entire lives.
I mean, I still remember when ETH moved, basically I mean, in general, whenever ETH moves $100, I'm I mean, I bought this shit for less. Yes, and it's what the fuck is this? It's kind of mad. We
need to unhinge. We need to untether from that, because that'll give us a unique form of PTSD. In any case, that's your kind of Bitcoin analysis, if it can be called that. Relative strength good, 19k support, 21k resistance. Seasonality kind of favors a bit of a bounce in October, November, certainly compared to September. If that starts to manifest, the bare minimum is a weekly close above 21k. Then the market starts to look decent. You can build a narrative that equity's nuked, currencies are breaking, and Bitcoin is reclaiming weekly support in a historically bullish kind of month. And then you can trade that towards the top of the range, 24, 25, and if you're lucky, a bigger reversion. But I think it all starts from 21k weekly reclaim. Do you more or less agree with that?
I do agree with that.
Cool. Yeah. And bear case is very self-explanatory. 19k is the new 6k. Expansion below that range. Goodbye, basically.
Yeah, that's gonna be.
See you later.
That's gonna be good. I mean, it goes from goodbye to goodbye.
Goodbye. Yeah, exactly. I was thinking this earlier. At this point in the market, more or less everyone's kind of being greedy, right? Because the overwhelming majority of participants would agree that, cyclically speaking, or for a multi-year horizon or whatever it may be, 20k BTC is a good buy, right?
Yes.
It's a good price. And same for ETH at whatever it is, 1.3, 1.4k. Because the base assumption for most crypto participants is that these, certainly the majors, will set new all-time highs, right?
Yes.
And the case becomes even more skewed for altcoins, Sol to go to its previous all-time high with fucking 10x or something, right?
Yes.
So basically, the idea becomes most participants who are still in the market now with money, short as that list may be, they kind of agree that on a multi-year time frame, these are really good prices. The question is, they want to get the best deal they can and buy as cheap as possible. So why should I buy Bitcoin for 20k or deploy some of my spending there if I can get it for 14, 12, 9, whatever it may be, right? Now, ultimately, while there is a percentage distinction between those two entries that's obvious, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, especially with all the trades you'll take down the line, if you're right about crypto, right? Like
I
if this
agree.
thing goes to like 100k and ETH goes to 10k, etc., no one's going to be like making fun of you for buying like 1.3 ETH instead of like 800 ETH. You know, like no one's gonna give a shit. It'll be like, oh my god, you bought during the tightening, recession, bear market, etc. You're such a Chad with diamond hands. Let me see your penis. You know, like that type of thing. So like fundamentally, we're all just kind of being greedy and trying to get the best price possible for these rapidly appreciating dollars that we've saved up as a result of de-risking earlier. But it kind of
Yes.
meant like as laser focused as we are on these levels 18, 19, 20, 21, 24 reclaim, 14k, 12k, all this shit. Like in the bigger picture, it's a distinction without a difference. Because you either buy the tightening cycle, recession, bear market, whatever, or you fucking don't, right? And for everyone who's around, the answer is yes. It's just a question of like, how many more tens of percent can I squeeze out of this thing before I shove? So maybe
Yeah.
that's
And
some
this
useful perspective.
and the thing is, like, this is how, like, I mean, I've seen this last cycle as well. I've seen it like through two cycles now, where I've heard this exact same arguing, like, not like the basically arguing that, hey, I'm not gonna buy this because I could go like 50% lower
Mm-hmm.
from like the biggest proponents of crypto, right? I saw this like around like 1,000 when we had like a dip, and then people like, okay, this is gonna go to like 300, 400, and then I'm gonna buy big, and then it goes to 2,000, and it goes to 3,000, and these people like, it's still gonna go there. I'm still gonna be patient. It goes to 5,000, it goes to 10,000, and they quit crypto and never come back, right? And they would have been in the perfect position to take advantage of it. They were early enough. They were sitting there. They were looking at the price, and they were like big fans. Because, like, let's be honest, right? If you're not really convicted that crypto is going to an all-time high again, or like that Bitcoin is going to an all-time high again, you don't need to buy this shit. You really don't.
Yeah.
Because at that point, there is a distinction to make between 20 and 10k if you're not entirely sure if this is actually gonna like do anything in the world. But if you are convicted that crypto is gonna be around and that Bitcoin and ETH and all of these things are going to back to all-time high, you're fucking moron if you don't have a position already, in my opinion. Because the thing is, right, this goes up, you're gonna cope, and then you're not gonna buy. You're not gonna buy all the way up, and then you have conviction, and you're gonna hate your life because you didn't buy while you had like conviction that it's gonna go up, but you had conviction also that it's gonna go like 10, 20, 30% lower, which, like you said, means nothing in the grand scheme of things, right? Like the people that sold Bitcoin at $10 because they thought it would pull back to 2, right? Nowadays you laugh about them, right? You see like these pizza stories or whatever, and people make fun of them. Well, it's happening every single cycle, right? Like every single time people that are actually convicted that it's gonna go higher are trying to be smart about it. And I think it's like it's beyond ridiculous. Now, if you don't think that it's gonna stick around, like I said, I don't think you want to make these calls. But if you have high conviction, I mean, if you're not buying already, like what the fuck are you doing? Because from 20k, even if you only think it's going back to all-time high, right? Like from 20k to 70k, that's a shitload of money to be made.
On the
Right?
most like boomer kind of risk-free kind of currency out of all of them as well, you know?
Yeah.
Like as far as risk curve goes, Bitcoin is the safest.
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's
look, the
kind of like,
advice it's kind of practical as well. Like the quote unquote advice I tell my friends, I'm like, I think these are good prices. I'm just a greedy trader with an ego who wants better prices, you know.
yeah.
So at least I've got the self awareness in that sense. But yeah, I don't think if you have any vision of crypto for the future, you will be ashamed of buying. Like you know, even now, do we make fun of people who like bought 6k before it went to 3k or whatever, you know, or people who bought like 10k from 20k, etc. It's like no, it went to 70k. No one's
Yeah.
making fun of people who bought 6k instead of 3k, even though there's like a 50% drawdown involved there, you know,
Yeah.
because the difference ends up being so massive, and I think it's very very similar circumstances here.
Yeah, I mean, I still remember when I bought like 6K broke down and I bought 4K and I
Yeah,
posted
yeah.
about it, and I got so much shit on Twitter. And it's like it's always the same, right? Like if like I mean I closed my positions, right? But like when I bought 20, I think it was like 22 the first time, and then I bought like a shitload more below 20K. But people made fun of it. Like they're like, okay, haha, your position went down 10% or something. But like if your position goes down 10% and then you 5x afterwards, like you don't give a shit. You
Yeah.
seriously don't give a shit. And it's the same with ETH, right? I bought ETH at 1,000. It went like to what was the low, like 888, right? and then people made fun of me for it, and then I got to sell it at 1,750, right?
Don't worry, Don. It was just
And
me and my alt accounts, so it's not as widespread as you think.
yeah, but I mean, like that's like that's the lesson in there, right? Like if you're having like a wider approach to it, or if you have like a long term kind of vision, or in general, if you even like zoom out a little bit and look at the weekly time frame, there's a big difference there, and you
Yeah.
don't want to get lost in like the, oh shit, I'm losing 2% here, 5% here, 10% here. If you have a long term view on this thing, I mean, do risk your 10% or like whatever you want to
That's
like.
true.
I think in general, like people are too afraid. Like during bear markets, you get so many hits in your face, right? It feels like you're in a boxing match and you don't know how to box, and you get just punched in the face over and over and over again. And at some point, you're just like, I don't want to be in the ring anymore, right? But that's kind of where you start, like where you should actually be. Obviously, the analogy sucks, but but it's kind of like you get punched in the face so often that you're afraid to take risk,
Yeah.
and then you're just like, the moment something goes against you, just like, okay, I'm not like, this is not something I like. The moment you see the punch coming, you're just like, no, fuck this, and you just run away, and that's never gonna work. So like sometimes you just have to take the risk. Sometimes you just have to risk getting punched in the face. And at 20K cycle lows, or like even below it, I think it makes sense for the convicted, amongst us. If you're not, do wait for your 18, 17, 16, 15, 14K. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't. If you don't, I mean, you can just trade something else, right? Or you can
Right.
trade the momentum. But the worst traders are really the traders that have high conviction in it going up and then don't buy, because they always stay out until the last moment and then they buy the Pico top before it actually
It's
retraces
true. It's
again.
true. And you should always also there's people a type of behavior you should avoid that we've spoken about on the show before is those who will just like constantly adjust their targets down as the market's moving towards them and adjust their targets up as the market's moving towards them. Like
Yes.
sometimes you will have very, very good reasons for doing that, but like I don't know, 9 times out of 10 you probably shouldn't because you can't reasonably expect to foresee every single thing that could happen en route to where you plan to buy or you plan to sell. So at a certain point you have to like embrace the uncertainty and say, fuck it, this is where I decided to do business, I'm gonna stick to that and do business. So if you
Yes.
find yourself being like, I want to buy this level, and then it goes to that level, and then it goes a bit lower, and then you're like, oh shit, never mind. Maybe there's another one below it. Like most of the time, that's the wick. That's the bottom of the area you wanted to trade in the first place. Especially if you're dealing with like higher time frame structures. At a certain point, you can't chase the market when it gets to extremes. That's how you end up being the wick, and not in a good way.
Yep.
ETH monthly is one you said you had concerns about or you didn't like that much. I remember you were parading this time frame not too long ago, based on the last monthly close. You said there was like a big bullish bounce from like previous cycles candle body, and then a pullback candle that kind of looks scary but is nothing, and then send it to 2400. Why are you
Yes.
doom posting now? What's changed?
I mean, because I sold my position.
Okay, structurally, why is this?
No, but the reason why is basically I was like hoping for the merge to do more. It's always like this thing where whenever you have big news, you want to kind of see how they impact the market. If it's bullish news, you want to see bullish price action. If you don't, that's a sign of weakness. If you see bearish price action after, it's a sign of massive weakness. If it's like bearish news and nothing happens, right? I mean, this is like how I bought the lows on Bitcoin, like during like the choppy days after the 3K bottom, like when we went up and then just went sideways. Like whenever I saw bad news that were like significant and the market like sold off a little and then like people stepped in heavily to buy. And this is something I still do with altcoins. This is kind of the best way to trade a lot of these coins in general. You get news and it does not do what you would expect it to. That means that there's people there that really want to have it, right? And
Like the amount of exchange hacks we had on the way up. It's like,
yes,
this type of stuff would just, in ordinary circumstances, nuke us 20-30%. Here you get like a 5-minute red candle that gets soaked up. I think
yeah,
we had an article somewhere, right, on Technical Roundup newsletter, like not the
we have.
quote unquote guide to news trading. It's like if an uptrend, there's like a heuristic basically to how to interpret news, but you basically want to see it get absorbed if the participants really care, right? So
Yes.
like bad news. So in a bull market, good news should send the price higher, and bad news should get absorbed. in a bear market, good news should get absorbed and bad news should send the market lower. And if you start seeing divergences in those behaviors, that can sometimes generate signals or show you that someone with deeper pockets and larger time horizons may be getting involved. I don't know if I
Yes.
butchered that, by the way, but
No, exactly.
sounds
And
right.
the thing is, if you just heard that explanation and you look at ETH and the merge, that was like the merge went well. It's not like it did anything bad.
It was like
So like
flawless.
yeah, and I mean the thing is, right? Like it's not like the merge is a news event that like it's like, oh yeah, ETH just partnered with like whatever Microsoft or whatever kind of garbage we had before, right? It's like there's a big change to ETH, and there's less ETH to sell every day now. And it's still, you look at the price, and it's bad price. So
Devs
um,
need to do more.
yeah, and like whenever you see this, like I just tend to not stick my neck out. It's just not interesting to me. And I had the merge trade, and then I kind of started seeing ETH struggle with resistances that it shouldn't have, and kind of good news, or like in general like the hype being absorbed, like people were selling into it. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to sell into it too. It obviously nuked, right? And it is now back at support, right? So it's back on weekly support, and it is in an area where you would think that it could make a higher low on the monthly, right? So if there was a time, like if I really wanted to own ETH and I didn't think that there was like the possibility of lower prices, this is pretty much exactly where I would want to buy. Like 1300 looks really good. Just based on the fact that if you are going to make a lower high, you cannot go much lower, because otherwise the chart looks like shit
You mean higher low?
already. A higher low,
Higher low.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no worries.
If you want to make a higher low, you cannot go much lower, right? You want to have buyer step in here, which just basically means you have your risk around like 1,000, and you have your reward upwards to like 2,400 or something. So I think there's like an area where you can make trades. It's just a question of do you want to, just based on the fact that the merge just kind of led to shit price action? And the
Petered
answer to
out.
that is I don't. I don't want to have like two conflicting signals. Like I think this is like a good support on the weekly, especially. It's a good area on the monthly to kind of do business, but it's also like, just given the fact that the ETH merge price action was just clearly bearish to me, that like those things conflict. So I don't want to trade ETH.
BTC is doing okay relative to the circumstances. Like it obviously
I
nuked from the merge, but it's just spent a couple weeks at the range midpoint. If you take it wick to wick, like around 0.07.
mhm.
That I mean, it's breakdowny obviously, and it was a blatant sell the news event.
But it's not
Especially with the
bad,
benefit of
bad.
hindsight. But that's not, relative to all of that, it's not looking like horrendous.
Yeah, honestly, like everything went down, right?
Yeah.
Like after the merge, and ETH didn't even like ETH didn't do particularly poorly. I think ETH actually, relative to a lot of other altcoins, I actually think ETH's a good buy. Like if you pair ETH with a lot of other things, I would much rather own ETH now. Given, like I said, the ETH USD pairs at support, but also given that yes, the ETH merge price action has been bad, but it's not as bad as the other coins. So the other coins, they've been performing much poorer. So basically, like buying ETH, selling another coin, still attractive. And I
Also,
think
this
that's
pullback is nothing to shake a stick at. It retests like from where it pico topped at 2K, that weekly resistance, all the way to the 1.2K big retest level. Dude, that's a 40% pullback.
yes,
Like when I looked at that and did the actual drawing tool to see it and visualize, I'm like, holy shit, that's a lot.
it
That's like
is. Yeah.
that's a big ass pullback. Especially for something so like catalyst and news driven and into a good level. So that made sense. I think we expressed that much in technical roundup as well. But like above 1,200 is fine. It just gets a bit, at least in terms of short-term technicals. There's a lot of crossover levels at like 1.3, 1.4, etc. But if you want to own it, you might as well own it close to support than anything else, right?
Yes.
I don't know if it's worth doing any other zoomed-in technicals as far as ETH goes. I mean, obviously the same goes as for BTC, where we want it to reclaim the previous cycle wick or the specific level. So in each case, that'd be 1400, and that's been resistance on the. I mean, look at that on the weekly, right? If you're using
Yeah,
even the Bitfinex or Coinbase chart, whatever, that's just like really good resistance,
it is.
which sucks because again, I'm making the claim that the previous cycle's level is currently high time frame resistance, which is true and unfortunate. But still, I think at the very least, if you set up a reclaim of that, that starts to look pretty decent. You know, you've got Bitcoin above 21k, ETH above 1400. You can, I don't know, it looks better than it. I like the market more above those levels than below them. At least put it that way, right?
Yeah, the cool thing about this, right? And I mean, people make fun of this, but I think it's like a really, really good way to trade. Is basically when you are in a bear market, right? And you want to have an asset. What you can do, and I think what is worthwhile to do most of the time, is you kind of have like you don't want to buy it outright because you feel like you're not good enough of a trader to kind of pick the lows, and I think that's completely fair, right? But what you want to do is kind of be like, okay, this is like this bearishness or like this trend is going to change at like X level, right? And the more bearish it gets, the lower that level goes, right? Because at some point, like you have like 70k, like we're trading a Bitcoin at 70k or almost, and then it like, and I did this on the show like multiple times, and I think you did too, where we talked about if this comes back into the range, it's bearish, right? Like if it loses basically the range high at 60k, and then it did, and then like both of us were talking about this, and we're like, okay, if it comes back above that range, it's back bullish again, right? And then it broke down to 30k, so like it's already down more than 50%, and then you can argue, hey, we have like a high here at 50k. If it comes back above there, and this is all on the weekly, then we have momentum again and might be bullish again. And it never reclaimed that, right? And then it went back to 30k support, broke that, and now like that. Okay, where is it bullish actually? Where can I buy? Kind of turns into okay, if we come back above 25k, there's a good chance that this is actually just a bottoming range and it starts looking much, much better again. Or even if you want to be very conservative, if it comes back above 30k, it's very clearly bullish, right?
Yeah.
And if we break down again from here, right? Like let's say 20k breaks and we go to 14k,
Ugh.
you can do this again, right? You can be like,
All the
okay, if
way to
it comes,
zero. Like the
yeah,
reclaims $200.
yeah, but at least like you're not buying into dying asset, right? You
Yeah.
are going to buy it on the upswing.
Well, you
And
say
that's
that, Don, but
something.
I've been trolled for like the entire year for for my low
Yeah,
trade frequency, which is
I mean,
understandable. But I've basically done that thing, right? Like the market shows a
yes,
bearish pattern. I'm like, invalidate the bearishness, I'll buy. It doesn't do it. Then it does another bearish pattern. I'm like, invalidate the bearishness, it doesn't. I don't buy. It dies. You know, repeat, repeat, repeat. It's been very funny to sort of trade that way because it's always like I'm the parent of some like drug addicted child, and I keep trying to give them a chance for a better life. I'm like, just proved, you know, I want to help you. Just help me help you. You know, show me that you
yes.
can be responsible and competent. Like a crumb of strength to compel me to own you, please. And it just goes down for like 15 weeks in a row, and I'm like, oh fuck, like what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, but I think the only one that is ever going to make fun of you for doing this is a bad trader.
Right.
Just sorry for anyone that's kind of made fun of Fred for this in action. But if you've made it and you actually are serious about it, you just fucking suck at trading. It's just my opinion, because like this is the way you want to be in bear markets, right? Because uh, you're going to be refreshed going into the market. Whereas everyone else that's been trading this shit the entire way down, even if they've bought the lows and sold like $100 higher, $200 higher,
We've
they're
all
gonna
been
be
there.
fucked in the head, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you trade through this bear market, and I mean, this is, I mean, I personally love trading bear markets, right? But I know that most people just lose their fucking minds. I still remember in 2018 when we went to 3K, where I had in Discord chats where people were actually talking about, okay, if this trade fails, I'm just gonna jump off a building. And that was kind of the humor that was going around. And you
Yeah,
always
yeah.
were like, is this actually serious or not? Because you could never tell, right?
Mm.
Um, and those people, like, they are obviously going to go into the into the next bull market differently, right? They're just kind of like some of them obviously will lose all their money and just disappear. A lot of people actually did this during the last
Oh, yeah.
bear market. If they didn't take these trades, they probably wouldn't have, even if they just sat in their assets, right? Like, let's say you bought Bitcoin at 15K and you sit in the bear market and it goes all the way to 3K and then you don't sell and it goes to 70K after, you're probably kind of fine, right? You may be a little bit annoyed that you didn't sell at 15K and then bought back at 3, but you're going to be fine, right? But the people that traded this, that didn't have like any invalidation and just lost their fucking mind trading it,
Yeah.
they're not. And
the PTSD habits that you bring with you, and also a lot of the time, like your relative purchasing power to what it could have been, because in most cases you're like grinding your account lower, right?
Yes.
Yeah, there are a ton of. I think being acutely aware of the market, and I still, short-term trade it just to get a sense and make sure I've still quote unquote got it. I think all of that is good. But yeah, sort of most of the market is generally just spot long their Bitcoin and alts, and not being that way, and thus and being in basically stable coins for the overwhelming majority of it since November, basically. My sort of purchasing power, even if I wanted to rebuy the same bags, is pretty cozy at this point.
Yes.
But in any case, I do want to quickly revisit ETH because we talked about the monthly and the weekly. I'm guessing our Duma case is basically, I guess, big breakdown back towards 1K, and then if not, towards much scarier sort of deeper previous cycles levels. What do you think the Duma scenario is for ETH?
I mean, ETH looks really shit below 1.2K, honestly. On the USD pair anyway. Like I said, like honestly, with the S&P looking like it does, I'm actually not too excited. I'm probably gonna reposition.
We should talk about that in a sec, yeah. We can do it now, to be honest. Like Bitcoin is pretty clear with the weekly structure and the bottom of the range. ETH very similar, like monthly close below previous cycles high, which isn't great. If you above 1,200 is fine, but it's just a bit crowded with 1.3, 1.4, etc. 1.4 plus stops becoming a bit more reasonable, but it's really the S&P that's got the most compelling or the most signal in the monthly close, perhaps. It's just been making new lows while we've been streaming, which is great, or recording, I should say. But yeah, this market looks. I mean, this is a downtrend, right? This is just very, very, very downtrendy. But it is going to reach that first level of. I'm not saying the 3,700 support was bad per se, but I think the way we kind of talked about it is it's really good for a first fresh bounce, especially given the amount of fear and one-sidedness that we had going into it. But it didn't. I think the way we described it in Technical Roundup was it's not like our favorite candidate for macro support or like macro bottom support, something like that, right? And that seems to be coming true now. It did a very good job, but fool me once type of thing going on. And then really I think we're going to get our first, or looks like we're heading towards our first retest of like strong high time frame support, closer towards like 3,300, right? The pre-COVID high, that weekly cluster, monthly cluster. It's also kind of the lower part of that box. I don't know if you ever looked at a quarterly S&P chart. I know I sound out of character.
Oh God, you sound like me.
I know, seriously. If you look at the quarterly, where the actual pre-breakout base took place, if you take that highest close before that quarterly engulf, it's at like 3,200, right? And you could even, if you wanted to, do a bit of a range where you do 3,200 is the highest close of that range, 2,500 is the lowest close of that same range, and then you get a nice sort of midpoint at 2,900. That's kind of what I have on one of my personal charts. Also, don't look at that current quarterly on the S&P because that candle is built different. But yeah, bigger picture, I mean, this looks like a breakdown, right? This looks like a downtrend. This looks like a breakdown. But at least the breakdown is headed towards something. And I think that there is some... look, if this shitty monthly support that we bounced like from 37 to 4,300 was tradable, I think there's a really good chance you get something tradable at 32, 3,300, 3,400, whatever, that cluster. That's kind of one crude way of putting it. What do you think of all that? Ooh, did I lose Don?
Oh, no, you didn't. I'm just an idiot. I was sorry about that.
No worries.
I totally agree with you. I honestly, like, I've just been trading this monthly and this weekly on the S&P the entire time. And I, like, now that it's failing the first time, basically, just makes me want to be more cautious. And that means, like, just giving it the room it deserves. And like you said, like, the The quarterly is like quite a bit away, so I
You're
think I
talking about
could.
it like it's a breakup. Like, I'm gonna be respectful, give it the deserve. I want to be
I mean, I'm
understanding at this difficult time. Like,
I mean, I'm kind of bummed about this because honestly, like it's gonna close below support
no.
most likely, and I think at that point a lot of crypto setups are gonna break, which bums me out. That's why I talk about it this way.
Listen, Dom, we're
So
too close to support to afford for these setups to break. Okay, like we don't
I mean,
have the
that's the
breathing
thing,
room.
right? That's the thing, right? I mean, it's at this point, right? Like if the S&P fails, and I think it's probably gonna come back and retest the monthly
Yes.
level. But if it fails, right, it's basically do or die. The correlation has to fail. And I don't like to be put in that position because I don't want to choose between taking a good setup and like, but that setup has to be based on like the correlation breaking. I fucking hate
Yeah,
that. I
that's
want
a
to
high
have like
bar. That's a difficult threshold to
yes,
meet.
and I mean I want to have like this situation where I want to have the correlation fail. Obviously,
Mm.
it's a good thing, but I want to have that happen when the S&P is at support. You know what I
Yeah, of
mean?
course. Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah.
I don't want to do it when the S&P is breaking supports because at that point it can snap back
Just
anytime,
one more
like you
thing
said.
against you. And confluence trading,
Yes.
this thing, as we've discussed, has been really good. Sort of indices at support, crypto doesn't, crypto at support, especially if it's the first time it's at range low and not like the 18th time as it would be right now. Do you think, as you know, because this looks at face value quite bad, that the monthly support looks like it's going to break and the next one down is like 30, low 3000s?
Hmm.
How bullish would you be on a reclaim or failed breakdown at this monthly support? If basically the leg we're seeing now, even if it pushes closer into 36, 35 handle, and then next month results in just like some sort of reclaim or engulfing back into 37, 38, would that be a very significant signal to you, or is this the type of thing where you're like, look, the breakdown sucks, I'm just gonna wait for higher time frame levels of support to be reached? And
Um, that's a very good question,
like,
actually.
is this level good enough to make you pay attention to a failed breakdown? Is one way of putting it.
I think so. Yeah, I think I could change my mind. Like if next month closes above the level, I could be
Okay.
like, okay, yeah, nice. The like bullishness can be back on,
And then the
but
nukes
honest,
start flying, and we're like, oh shit.
yes. But then again, we're like in that situation, we're fucked anyway, right? So I might as well just gamble money
Thing is,
on like.
even as the nukes are flying, there's going to be some guy on Twitter being like, look, this RSI divergence on the VIX predicted this exact event.
Yeah, I mean
We get
that's
to
how
smile
it's.
before the lights go out.
That's kind of how it always is going to be,
That's
right? I
so good. I
mean,
love it, especially when there's like some hidden FBI raid. Some like really secret thing. And it's like, oh, bro. It's like, I knew it. It was in the charts, the fact that it tested resistance. It's like, dude, shouldn't you be like an informant or something? It makes no sense. I love those people
oh,
because, like, you get the extremes where on the one side, it's like TA is completely useless and prices are never predictive of anything to any extent on any time frame, and order herding doesn't exist, order splitting doesn't exist, none of this is real, it's all noise, whatever. And on the other
yeah.
hand, you're like, the secrets of the universe are unveiled to you. Like, non-material information can be derived from like candlesticks, and it's always funny to engage with both sides of those. But yeah, that's my favorite, when there's like some hidden raid, or like someone dies in a plane crash or some crazy freak event, and some dude comes out with his free trading view, not even premium, being like, I called this shit.
Oh yeah, I mean that's.
Sorry, I
I
know it's a
honestly think
tangent, but this shit is so hilarious.
I think both sides is completely stupid, right? If you say like yeah, the TA is completely useless, and then you've seen like how TA heavy the S&P has been, I think you're just delusional at that point. But also, if you think that TA is going to predict everything, you're just stupid because I mean, it makes zero fucking sense. So it's kind of like it's both. You just want to keep your wits about you, but for some reason, people in today's day and age, they don't. It's either always okay, TA is the or like everything really, but one thing is like the holy grail, and the other thing is like the evil, and then the other way around, right? But that's not how the real life works, right? You have your tools, you have your ideas, and they're like partially right and partially wrong, and you kind of have to live with that. And I mean, trading is the same. It's just like at the end of the day, it's like a game of odds, and
Yeah.
people feel like whenever I see someone talk in certainties too much, and the bad thing is right, like if I speak in certainties and do the same channel that we're doing right now, and I hype it up a little bit more, I could get like, I'm sure I could get like 20 or 30%,
Oh yeah, of
not 20,
course.
20 or 30 times the fewer numbers,
Here's
because
why the S&P will crash,
yeah, and
Bitcoin
people
will
will gobble
decouple
it
in,
up.
that type of stuff. They love to
Yeah,
hear it.
people will gobble it up, and it's how the world works, right? People want to have other people tell them what is going to happen or what isn't,
Yes.
but
The
that's not.
certainty, even if it's fake, is reassuring to people, right?
Yes,
And that also
exactly.
means they can outsource the blame to someone other than themselves, which is a very powerful way to incentivize people, right? Because
Yeah,
instead of confronting their lack of independent thought or being idiots or whatever, you can be really certain, they're reassured by you being certain, and put their decision making process in your hands. And if you're right, they feel intelligent for having chosen you and also trust you more. And if if you're wrong, they just have someone to blame, and obviously it wasn't their fault. They just listened to someone who was incorrect. You basically get to
yeah.
absolve yourself of all the downsides of personal responsibility, which is whatever. Like, I'm the complete opposite. I've got like European imposter syndrome times like a million, and every trade I open, I'm like, I'm an idiot who knows nothing. My counterparties are quant MIT fucking geniuses. I will be so lucky if the market hits my take profit. Please God, let me out. I promise I'll never trade again. That type of mindset where like
Yes.
you're waiting for a trade, and as soon as it fills, you're like, oh, let's fucking go. I'm about to crush this, and then 2 seconds later, you're like, okay, I was joking. Let me out, please, 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 please. Like, I'll do anything. Yeah.
I
Anyway,
know exactly what you
but
mean.
yeah,
Yes.
it's a very real feeling. But I think to summarize, the S&P picture is that 37 to 3760-ish was monthly support. It generated a huge bounce into monthly resistance, but all of that is still within the larger downtrend, and it seems like support in a downtrend is breaking, and generally that's kind of how it goes. And you expect it to go to the next level of support. So if it closes below, which looks almost certain, and comes back to retest 3700, I think up to 3900 can even be okay given it's monthly, right? So you
Yeah.
expect a wick above the area if it's going to be a bearish retest. But in any case, on a monthly and weekly level, for that kind of 3800 to be resistance, we expect that to do something given how technical the market's been. And then your larger levels of support start at 3500 if you want to take the pre-breakout stuff, but it's really kind of the 32 to 3300 in terms of the next monthlies. What would change our mind in terms of downtrend continuation is a really clear failed breakdown at this 3700 juncture, and all of this would end up being the failed break, a clear reclaim, then we can trade the same range again between 37 and 4300. But I think with very technical downtrends, you kind of just have to take them at face value. At face value, it looks like a close below monthly support and downtrend continuation towards COVID pre-breakout highs, which start at, again, 35 to 33 is probably a good way to look at it. Is that a
Yep.
decent summary?
That is a decent summary.
Nice. I think we've done. I mean, we can talk about the Nasdaq very quickly. I kind of don't want to because it's scary. Have you seen the monthly chart on that thing?
I actually have not. Is it closing below?
I mean, it's teasing us. It's playing.
Oh, I mean, that looks like that's at least somewhere
That's a
where
fighting
we have
chance.
support.
That's a
Yeah.
fighting chance. Like if it spikes the swing low from June and closes above, then maybe it looks possible, right? It looks decent. That doesn't seem to be showing a willingness to do that at the moment. That's certainly one thing. My question is, if this breaks this monthly cluster, it has to go to zero, right?
Yeah.
Specifically, where my eye is going, obviously, the COVID
Yes,
pre-breakdown. I
9,000.
mean, that's from the top to bottom, that seems like apocalypse type of scenario, right?
No,
That's
that
like
seems
a halving.
that seems quite rough. Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe it's that we get like a failed breakdown there or something. If it fills the gap, I mean, that would be really, yeah. Maybe S&P has to like drag it basically and rescue it before it gets there. But I think similar in terms of monthly close watch or levels to look at. If you look at the cluster on the daily time frame, it's actually been incredibly technical. So I think that's still worth paying attention to. Basically, 11.1k to 12.1k, really good levels. But yeah, I think if the S&P just keeps rugging, I don't really put a ton of faith into this cluster low holding. But yeah, I just look at equities, just look a bit droopy, right? And downtrendy. I don't think there's anything more we can add there. No
No.
point larping about the dollar or any of that type of stuff. I mean, it did pull back it's been pulling back for a few days now. But bigger picture, I think people are just so pressured and so wrecked by this strong dollar. Every single red candle seems like a topping structure, and they're sort of chasing ghosts on that one. I agree it's at resistance, sort of at the previous, even looking at a quarterly chart, that kind of cluster at around 113, 112, whatever it may be, potential type of lower high thing. I'm completely sympathetic to that. I still think a bigger picture, though, this is like a, what, 8-year range breakout, or however you want to describe it, basically between that kind of the consolidation where we're coming from, to a large extent. I would be cautious in fading this too quickly or too aggressively. We're not going to laugh about macro too much on the show. It's already too long, and we still have news to go through very quickly. But there is a world in which Europe's inflation is like very, very high. If euro starts to strengthen, that could take some pressure off the dollar as well, and settle that dynamic with not just dollar weakness but euro strength, which will kind of look like dollar weakness. Maybe that will help. But yeah, bigger picture, I think we didn't spend much time talking about it, but it's mostly because it sucks, right? The macro picture, all this inflation, war, commodities, dollar, central banks starting to like intervene in their bond markets and credit markets to avoid liquidations. You could make a case that, oh, look, everything is at support and stuff is breaking, you should buy it. But to me, maybe I'm biased here, it seems more like cracks before a real break, more so than like stuff is breaking, you should buy it. I don't know what you think of that. Oh god, I've put him to sleep.
Oh God, I keep on, like, I have people in my house, so I keep on muting
Oh, no
myself
worries.
in between.
We'll wrap
and
up. Go back to your Friday night party.
But no, I do agree. It's a little bit scary. It feels like the Luna deploying more thing, which is a little
Steady
bit scary.
lads deploying more capital.
Yeah, like that is not something you want to be seeing. Obviously, like this could be all like just being like too cautious at the bottom, because we've been saying like don't fade the Fed for a long time. Now we have like world governments being basically like, okay, we need to stop this. Maybe that's just gonna be like the bottom for like all of this. But you are right. It does feel kind of scary. It does feel more like, okay, this is just cracks, and there might actually be something that goes horribly wrong. Like, I mean, like 2008, the Lehman Brothers things, like that kind of like extent just seems likely.
But we've already had Evergrande, Don.
I mean, I guess, but Evergrande is actually not the only one in China.
Bro, that was so much fun. It was literally just like, especially compared to now, it was like one tiny thing, and then within a day, my entire Twitter was just like, "This is why this is bigger than the Lehman Brothers." Oh god.
Oh yeah, and then nothing happened.
Nothing happened.
But yeah,
typical, fucking typical.
It does scare me a little bit. And I wonder where this is gonna go. I don't think it's gonna be too pretty in the near future. For me, like what I'm doing basically in the market is just taking my 20, 30, 40% here and there, sometimes aiming for a little bit higher, usually aiming for higher.
Work, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I usually aim for higher, and then I like at some point it's like, okay, this isn't going as I wanted to, and then I just sell.
Yeah.
It's been the story, and I will continue doing that probably.
Very mercenary.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really pay to be loyal to something.
And in these conditions, what are you trying to swing trade? There's no trend to swing trade,
Yes.
There's not even a big range to swing trade. Like, you have just downtrending equities and compressed volatility and like Bitcoin ETH with the catalysts in the periphery. So, I mean, if it's still got me, people are complaining about volatility now. I think they're spoiled children. Like, if it's got me still clicking and day trading once every few days, then it can't be that bad, right? Certainly compared to some of the stuff that we're used to from 2018, etc. Like 2% weekly range for like 3-4 weeks in a row. You remember that shit, right? I mean, it's just like complete. And also, altcoins just didn't exist really in the same way. And yeah, so these conditions are still very much tradable. I just think it has to be like very short term, in and out, hit and run, take what you can, be sensitive about taking profits, and if the nukes start flying, you gotta be ready. But I think that's a
Yes.
decent summary of at least technical stuff with, BTC. We've talked about, monthly close above 20K would be good. Weekly reclaim of 21K is necessary. Otherwise, you're still stuck in the same bum-tight range of 19 to 21. ETH, very similar, reclaiming previous cycle level of 1400, which has become a pivot on the weekly, would be really good. In the short term, if it's above 1200, which is the daily range high, that's decent. It's just there isn't much room to kind of swing trade 1200, given you've got some resistance at like 1300, 1400. But yeah, above 1400, it starts to look okay. Obviously, the doomer scenario for both is that equities just drags everything lower and they break their ranges to the downside, and then you can get your scary targets out. But in terms of the levels that are applicable now, that's kind of what's available. As far as the S&P goes, same thing, monthly resistance, well, looks like it's going to be resistance given the closes coming up between 37.05 and 37.60. That looks like it's cooked, to be honest with you. So next month you can either expect downtrend continuation towards the pre-COVID breakout cluster, which is 34 to 3300. If the market does bounce early next month, you'll have to make an assessment of, is it a bearish support resistance flip back at 37, 3800? Your presumption should be yes, given how technical and downtrendy this market has been. But obviously, if it resolves in a failed breakdown and some sort of reclaim, we can shift our bias. But at face value, it looks like downtrend continuation, and similar considerations for the Nasdaq 12.1 to 11.1 range. If that range breaks down, then it's probably just going to go down a lot lower. And as far as currencies and dollar, euro, etc., dollar approaching some high time frame resistance. We're talking about the 2000s here, 2001 lower high, but historic levels. Not really even sure how useful TA is there. Market structure wise, you could see some sort of slowdown, but structurally speaking, I mean, dollar's still this is a multi-year breakout that's structurally doesn't seem to be slowing down at all. Should we zoom through some headlines, completely sort of lightning round them?
Sure, if we do lightning.
Lightning round, here we go. BlackRock preps ETF targeting metaverse companies, according to Bloomberg. I think metaverse companies suck. If you want to earn metaverse stuff, you need to be like super crypto native and buy like specific governance tokens which you believe in. Or if you want to be a boomer, just buy Meta, like actual, previous Facebook, and that's like a multi-year vision there. I think in general, when it comes to crypto sectors and big sort of service providers starting to start giving you these indices and sectoral allocations, like DeFi index or that type of stuff, it's usually just the top, or it's usually just like an inferior product compared to creating the exposure yourself. What do you think?
Totally agree. I mean, honestly, like the whole metaverse thing, the hype,
So
I
dumb.
never understood it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't want to buy land online. You can make infinite of that. If anything, like land is, or like, I mean, land is obviously just the easiest one to talk about, but like the thing is, like, there's infinite land digitally, and there's not infinite land non-digitally, so it should be kind of obvious
and
which
different
one you should
metaverses
prefer.
as well, and
Yes,
and it seems like we're behind on the tech also. Like these games and these metaverses look like garbage. Maybe with the funding and some sort of cycle it really accelerates, but for the time being, metaverse was basically the product of like peak 2021 froth. And all these NFTs were going to make their game metaverse, all these normie brands talking about it, and nothing came out of it. There's nothing to show for it.
I mean, COVID was the perfect storm, basically, if you think about it. Like, everyone was locked at home, and then people want to have like a world in their computer. Not even during COVID times did it materialize, so why the fuck would it afterwards? Correct. I don't really, like, at some point 100%,
no, for
right?
sure.
But
it
like
won't be
in
the
the next 5 years, yes, it's not going to be the tokens.
It won't be the land token you bought at like 200 trillion valuation at the Pico top, unfortunately. Judge denies another SEC attempt to shield documents in Ripple case. So this is kind of, again, to do with disclosure and kind of civil procedure and so on. But it does seem like the XRP narrative is brewing, and it kind of popped a bit on the news. And it sort of retraced a lot of the ugly dumping it did, at least on the closing basis, and it's back at 50 cents. Do you still have your bag? Are you still holding towards 60?
I still have my bag, but given how the S&P is going to close, there's a good chance I'll actually sell it.
Okay.
But I still think XRP is like the play to be made. So if it dumps anywhere low, because everything else dumps, I will buy it again. Like, this is the coin that I will be trading. But I'm not willing, like, when the reason why I felt comfortable buying garbage and buying altcoins and buying all this kind of shit was because Bitcoin was at weekly support, ETH was at weekly support, and the S&P was at monthly support, right? Now I have Bitcoin at weekly support that is tested a million times, ETH at weekly support, which it doesn't want to move from, and the S&P breaking the support that it is supposed to be holding. That's not necessarily the combination I want. I do want to I saw the XRP kind of narrative before it actually even existed, basically. So I do want to have that.
You saw the lawsuit in the TA, bro. You knew it was gonna happen.
I mean, that one, honestly, this kind of news that just came out yesterday, that you could actually see in DTA, I think. Like, this is just like a bunch of front running. There's so many people involved.
Privy, this type of stuff. Yeah,
yes, yeah. Especially with XRP, allegedly, whatever. Every time XRP is in the news for something, for some reason, it moves in that direction a couple hours before.
Efficient markets, they can see into the future, bro. That's how efficient these markets are.
So yeah, that I think that was basically there was indication there. Yeah, but I'm not gonna hold. I want to own it, but I don't want to own crypto when it looks like this. Yeah. So there's a good chance I'm just gonna sell it. Haven't made up my mind yet, but that is just kind of like how I'm looking at it. I'm up quite a bit, so wouldn't mind another this is 20% again, after or more than 20% even after my Atom play that made me 30 or 40. Obviously gave a little bit back on Atom because Atom, I bought it at 13.9 just a couple of days ago, and it's at 13 now. So I lost a little bit on that front, but I've made a bunch more on XRP. My Atom position was smaller too. So that's just kind of how I trade right now.
Nice.
But I think XRP is the way. You have to look at XRP in the next couple of weeks to months. It's just when I don't want to own crypto, I don't want to own XRP.
Well said. Let's continue. Meta's Zuckerberg warns of hiring freeze, restructuring plans. He still says the economy looks like poo-poo, so they're still reducing headcount growth, etc., all this kind of stuff. I think we'll have a cycle where crypto natives will actually love owning the Meta stock because he's going so hard in this whole metaverse idea and NFTs. I don't know if you saw they had some Instagram integration for US users and Facebook integration, all that type of stuff. But I just found this interesting because it's still again a major tech company which has bearish views as to growth and the economy for the near future. So it just reminded me of when we talked about all the crypto companies just completely nuking hiring and headcounts, etc. And the market was quite a lot higher than it was now. It seems like there's the appetite for rehiring among big tech companies still isn't there. And this isn't even one of those crazy growth overweight ones, as obviously the metaverse pivot is expensive, but you kind of hope they know what they're doing when they they've got good information or assessment of the economy when it comes to these things. So I mean the S&P seems to agree for the time being.
I would not fade Zuckerberg. He's
plugged into the matrix, bro.
I mean, I still remember when he bought WhatsApp. I was like, why the fuck would you buy WhatsApp? And then he buys
Zuckerberg just came back
Instagram.
From the Lizard Symposium, and they told him what's going to happen to the global economy. So he's kind enough to talk to us.
I mean, he's a genius. Market-wise, it's just how it is. He knows. So I wouldn't want to fade him long term. It's just his timing can obviously be wrong, or especially given when you're that big, you have to be wrong timing wise. It's just how it works, right? Sure. You cannot buy the bottom when you're ginormous, because you buy the bottom, and the bottom is always when the ask is gonna be thin, right? Because it's gonna bottom when everyone that has sold wants to sell has sold, right? And so you want to be buying during the crash when you're ginormous. As in forming the bottom, you don't want to buy the bottom, because if you buy the bottom, you don't get filled, right? It's the same in crypto. When you're trading bigger size and you buy the Pico bottom, you get a tiny percent filled of what you want.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and obviously, it's just how it works, right? So, and if you're that ginormous, you obviously have to mistime it, and people are gonna make fun of it for a year or two, or maybe even 5, and then he's gonna be probably right, like he has been. So I would keep on watching that. Obviously, seems like a kind of well-connected, smart guy, a little bit like a lizard, like you said. But, I mean,
a little bit.
If you have lizard confluence, I mean. But yeah.
This one I just thought was dishonest, to be honest. Not dishonest, I just think it's dumb. CFTC chair, BTC price might double with more regulation of crypto markets. This is like the classic lazy cope argument that people make. Like, oh, if only regulation was clearer, all these like infinite trillions pools of US capital would just flood into Bitcoin. I think some of that is true. Like if we had better structured products like a spot ETF instead of, this kind of crappy expensive futures ETF, that would be fine. But the idea that, in order to go up a lot, you need this like regulatory certainty that then brings in huge players, it's like absolutely untrue, right? It's such a momentum and sort of liquidity driven market that, as we saw in 2020, 2021, it was pretty much just Michael Saylor and a bit of Elon, but then the rest was basically like crypto funds. That was enough to take this thing from, I mean, Saylor was even late, right? Like when he started really getting into it, if you think about from bottom to top, just on kind of quote unquote with crypto money, this thing went from like 3K to 70K, right? From low to high. And, as far as the institutional participation, yes, there were some GBTC ARBs and Saylor and Elon, etc., but we didn't have that type of mega regulatory clarity or structured products that's implied in the article, and we still got to like $1 trillion market cap just on BTC. I don't know if this is like an unpopular opinion or something, but I just really find this angle to be super overstated and overrated. It just feels like one of those things you say to sound smart as far as market dynamics go without actually kind of reviewing history or looking at like why prices move. And so you kind of just wave your arms and say, ooh, if only we had better regulation, we'd be at like 10 trillion. But that's kind of just not my understanding of the market. I think actually the regulatory clarity element of it is super overrated at this point. And if anything, even if it weren't overrated, it's against us after the whole Terra Luna, 3AC, Celsius, Do Kwon, etc. blow up. So maybe talk less about regulation, because if we do get it, it's going to be mostly heavy-handed and stuff that kind of moves against us. I don't know what you think about this whole, we need every single US fund to be super clear and then we can go up type of thing. I just think it's a bit short-sighted.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, honestly, I think crypto needs regulation as like contra. Like, I mean, that just goes against like the opinion of like 99%, I think, in the space. But just looking at Luna, I think we kind of deserve it. As bad as that sounds.
I mean, we failed to self-police completely, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, and this is something I talked about on last stream that I did, where I went solo, where I talked about that one day we're gonna have a scam that is too big. Like Luna almost got there, where it's like it's too much. That if it goes, it actually takes everything with it. And if we don't get any regulation, it seems like crypto doesn't give a shit, right? People are happy to gamble in that direction. They don't give a shit. And then like the poor, and it's always the same people, right? The people that have no idea what the fuck they're doing, they get completely rinsed. And I think at some point, if we don't regulate, and it has to be the government at this point, because it's clear that crypto cannot do it itself, then there's going to be a scam that is so big that it's just going to be like reasonable to just kind of forbid the whole thing, I think.
Like when it becomes a systemic risk to the wider economy type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, imagine the market cap of Luna was 10 or 15 times as big as it was. At that point, you become like a systemic risk. And then it's really hard to move against crypto, because that kind of proves the point, right? Like when you get like when crypto goes up and you move against it, you kind of prove the point that crypto is trying to make. So like you have to regulate stuff when it actually goes down, as stupid as that sounds. So like it would have to, like that could lead to a scam just getting so big that it actually becomes a systemic
It reminds
risk.
me of the deleted Suzu tweet telling Saylor to put his Bitcoin into like convert it to USD and put it into Anchor. Like can you imagine? I mean, that we'd be at zero. Like we would actually be at zero.
And like that's the thing, that it's scary, and I think we have not learned our lesson, and we'll never will.
It's just a misclick, bro. Okay. Final two. Fidenza creator we can probably zoom through these. Fidenza creator's new NFT project QQL Mint Pass earned 17 million upon launch. This is Tyler Hobbs. Fidenzas are ugly. Dude is a Chad for selling them for like millions and tens of millions. Dude is a turbo Chad for realizing that it's easier to just launch something else and leave people holding the Fidenza bag rather than trying to always reinvigorate and keep up the old collection. This is literally like genius playbook in my opinion. I know I'm being cynical, but like realistically, as far as we've talked about NFTs, it's so much easier to just make a collection, ride the hype, big mint, etc. Secondary market goes up and so on, and then you just fucking go do another thing. Is that the most kind of moral choice? No, not always. But in terms of pure kind of financial calculations and survivability, and if you want to just maximize the amount of revenue you make, dude, this is the fucking way, right? You ride the short-term wave, the mint wave, the secondary listing momentum, then as soon as that starts to slow down, peace out, I'm Zagabond on my 8th Vault account, and this is my next NFT, you know? So it's just funny to see that. I mean, even these conditions, you know, he's clearly knows what he's doing. But this is, I think, we'll see more of this, and I think this goes against what a lot of NFTs think they're doing. We're like, oh, we're building a community and so on and so forth. There are some exceptions to that, but like the founders are extremely incentivized to just run it all over again, as opposed to sit there trying to band-aid a new community or like keep one for weeks and months, you know?
I mean, volumes are down. No one gives a shit.
It was like 93 or 97% or something, right? It's like NFTs are basically
97%. Yeah,
NFTs are mostly dead, and ETH is, you know, extremely cheap, and yeah, classic sort of bear market wasteland. Last one, FTX wins auction for bankrupt crypto lender Voyager. I think I saw somewhere in the court documents that it was going to be like under the FTX US. That was the bidding entity that was doing it. I don't know if that's purely for like legal purposes, which is likely, and or if it will mean that it also gets kind of integrated under FTX US as far as the user's funds and interface and all that type of stuff. I think like it's a pretty good strategy, right? Voyager was pretty popular, reputationally pretty good. They ate shit on the 3AC loan. If you're looking to get more US users or to maybe be seen as kind of good faith bailout type of actors, this isn't like one of the worst deals to be doing, especially if you have like a lot of US customers and just a lot of customers in general. You know, you get some moral points for kind of bailing them out, and you also just get the kind of customer acquisition benefit of that as well. So and also the kind of tertiary effect, which you've discussed before, that you want to be seen as, you know, if you're the bailout figure, you might get some sort of regulatory slack for that by not letting the industry collapse completely. So that's this, you know, we were trolling the GameStop stuff yesterday or last week on the last show. As far as FTX decision making, this is better in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think so too. It makes sense. And I've seen people make fun of it, but honestly, it makes sense to me. Yeah. It's just, especially given the goodwill it's going to get from regulators, it just makes sense.
Dude, was Voyager's entire loan to 3AC uncollateralized, the 650 million? Isn't that so insane? Like
90% or something.
I can't get over this. Like
really
at some
bad.
point, someone will write a book, hopefully a good book, about like the whole Terra, Luna, 3AC loan, etc. And still having lived through it, once I reread it, I'll just be in such disbelief at what went on. You know?
Yeah.
Final one, Eurozone inflation hit double digits for the first time ever. Jumps to record 10% in September, with core CPI also making a new all-time high. And this is just ahead of, you know, winter, basically, or entering or heading towards winter. So that could also be a reflection there. But, I mean, Europe looks... I mean, I think it's going to be a bit of a stress test this coming winter. With the energy crisis, the war, high inflation, it's not looking good, bruv.
Yeah, I mean, we're living through it. It's going to be interesting to see that one coming. But yeah, I mean, it looks rough. I think it's going to, like, if it's a tough winter, it's going to be really tough. Like if it's cold. And for some reason, I talked with friends about this. For some reason, it feels like it kind of will be. It just seems like this is how the world works now, right?
Type of year, yeah.
Yeah. if you absolutely cannot have something, it will happen. So I'm kind of like, I'm expecting it, to be honest. So yeah, that's going to be...
Does that cross over into any market predictions for you, or kind of bias or whatever?
I honestly think no one knows. Me neither. Like, I think that is going to lead to volatility, and that is going to lead to positions that, like situations that you can take advantage of. But I don't think it's anything that you can predict. Like realistically, I'm just going to react to it. I'm going to see something stronger than it should be. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to see something that is weaker than it should be. I'm going to sell it.
Yeah.
That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. I don't think you need to be like if you try to be too much of a genius, kind of predicting this stuff, you're just going to get your face kicked in. That's kind of.
And again, it's ironic because like everyone feels they need to be macro predictive genius, but like the high time frame TA has been pretty fucking good. I know it sounds like a broken record on it, but you know, simple tools are working too well, so milk them while they last, because that might not last forever. Wow, very long show. Don, any final notes, comments, questions, concerns, things to leave us with for this weekend? Apart from, there's a loud party going on behind you, you're dying to go, and now this is like the longest technical roundup ever. You're like, it's terrible.
Yes, I mean, I have a concert to go to, so I'm gonna leave.
Nice.
But yeah, wish you all a good weekend. And
Don's like, I'm gonna dump everything because the S&P is shit. So wish you all a good weekend.
I mean, that might happen over the weekend. I cannot promise anything. It is what it is. But yeah, no, I just enjoy your weekend, and don't go too crazy, I think, in the markets, because it's pretty
new
pretty
monthlies
tough.
and new quarters and the options expiries and all this type of stuff. You could give it a bit of room. Thank you again to FTX for supporting the show. Mobile trading app. That means you can't get liquidated unless you're somehow very creative. Puke the top, sell the bottom, do all that type of good stuff. Track your portfolio even when it's going down. There's a nice hide portfolio button you can use, which may be helpful if Don's SPX call is correct. Check them out in the description below. Like the video, do all the normal YouTube stuff. Have a wonderful weekend. That's all from us. I will see you for Monday markets and usual programming next week. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.